Good afternoon, everybody. Today we're going to talk about Puede fútbol, cambiar el mundo. Can football change the world? My name's Ben. I'm going to moderate here, but we've only got 2 microphones, so you won't hear too much from me. And my place among this group is, I guess, 20 years in working in the football industry, and only very recently on a consultancy base with the Common Goal initiative, moving into the charity space, and a firm belief, I think, shared by the rest of the guys here, that managed in the right way and using the right language. Oh look, I've got a chair. Thanks. Football can really be a dynamic and sustainable social tool. And I think in the context of where we are at the moment in the football industry, now is a good time. So from somebody that's not from the charity space, I can very much see it as a business opportunity at the moment for the sport, which is preoccupied about losing its relevance among younger digital generations. And we're going to look at some of what these guys do, who have all come from different approaches, but I think all with the shared belief that soccer is an incredible social tool, and that now is the time for it to be implemented in the right way. So starting on my far right, Thomas Preiss, who's the co-founder of Common Goal and also the head of business development at Street Football World, the award-winning NGO based in Berlin. Sitting next to him is Lawrence Cann, the CEO of Street Soccer USA, which is using soccer to transform communities in 15 different cities around the USA. German Arguelles, who's the CEO and co-founder of The Third Half, which is using the power of soccer for cultural and educational transformation all over the world. And finally, Simon Smallbone, the European Managing Director of Kick for Life, the world's first football club dedicated to social change. So to start with Thomas, if you just want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing, please.
Sure. So first of all, welcome everybody. It's great to be here with you today and share a little bit with you about our vision for football, which in the case of Street Football World and now in particular Common Goal is all about connecting the business of football with the social dimension of the game, and very happy to be able to share that story with you today. We have a short video that is going to introduce what Common Goal is all about, and I'm going to run that now.
There are 2 worlds of football. The first is my world, our world. The world of professional football. This is the superstar players, the sold-out stadiums, the spectacular goals. This is where champions are made and layers are born. It's the football we know and love. But it's not the whole story. There is another world that exists outside of ours. A world in which football is not just a game. It is a tool to support those less fortunate than us. This world is not about winning or raising trophies. In this world, their world, football carries a different meaning.
Para mí es respeto, buena comunicación y amistad.
Spaß, Respekt und Fairplay.
Respeto, valor y amor, porque o sea, el fútbol es amor.
The idea is simple. We pledge 1% of our salaries to a collective fund, and Common Goal allocates this fund to football-based projects that make a real difference.
That's unfortunately not the full video. But maybe you got the idea. So it's about connecting two worlds of football, with the first world being the world we all know, the world of professional football, and the other dimension, which was briefly introduced by the video, which is about using the game as a force for good. And it's what all of us doing with our ventures here. So in brief, Common Goal is about collective philanthropy. It's an initiative that encourages football players and managers in the first instance to pledge 1% of their salaries to a collective fund that then strategically invests in football-based development programs around the world. We started this initiative this August, publicly, with Juan Mata being the first player to make this 1% pledge, and have since seen many more players. It's around 30 players right now have joined. And we're also delighted to have the World Football Summit, the first event that has decided to pledge 1% of its income also to this initiative. So thank you very much for that.
Sure. Bueno, voy a intentar hacerlo en español para que me entiendan. ¿Está bien? Me llamo Lawrence Cann, soy fundador de Street Soccer USA y voy a decir 3 cosas sobre la historia de nuestra organización. La historia de Street Soccer empieza con una historia muy personal. Cuando tenía 9 años, la casa de mi familia se quemó y perdimos todo. Pero fue una experiencia no muy negativa, pero muy positiva, porque tenía una red social de los padres de mis compañeros de fútbol, de mi familia, vivía con mis tíos y con mis abuelos. Fue una experiencia muy rica y me afectó mucho. Así que ahora, con Street Soccer USA, esta idea todavía es fundamental a la organización. Una red social que se crea alrededor del fútbol. Así que lo que hacemos nosotros a través de los Estados Unidos, en 15 ciudades, pero con 6 ciudades principales, es crear clubes gratuitos en los barrios más, pobres, de bajos recursos, donde la oportunidad de jugar deportes organizados no existe. Y formamos estos equipos y por medio de la relación que formamos en los equipos, empezamos a ayudar con la educación, con el empleo por las familias y toda esa cuestión social. Así que eso es la cosa fundamental que hacemos. Aparte de eso, que trata mucho del tema de hoy, tenemos empresas sociales, unas ligas que nos deja como organización sin ánimo de lucro participar en la industria del fútbol. Así que tenemos ligas para los adultos, ellos pagan en este dinero que no invertimos en este negocio, el profit, invertimos en los barrios, en los programas. Y también tenemos unos campeonatos que se suceden en los lugares más famosos de los Estados Unidos. En Times Square tenemos una copa y tenemos sponsors y todo el dinero que recaudamos por estos eventos va a apoyar nuestros proyectos sociales. Hacemos eso en Nueva York, en Filadelfia, en Los Ángeles y otras ciudades. Y la tercera cosa, y es porque estoy acá hoy, primero como orgulloso miembro de Street Football World, pero también porque debido a una colaboración que estamos lanzando con AFE, la Asociación de Futbolistas Españoles. Estamos muy orgullosos de estar en esta colaboración con ellos. Es un proyecto muy lindo para que los jugadores, los exjugadores de AFE brindan oportunidades a ellos seguir participando en el fútbol como técnicos que van a viajar a trabajar en nuestros barrios como modelos para los chicos de nosotros. Y nos va a ayudar mucho, como somos expertos en la parte social de nuestro programa. La gente de AFE son expertos en el fútbol y va a mejorar el nivel de nuestro programa muchísimo. Así que, eso más o menos es el resumen. Y gracias. Voy a pasar.
I got a mic over here. Well, you've been brave to do it in Spanish. I'll do it in English also, knowing that Thomas and Simon would like to follow me up. My name is Germán, as Ben said. I'm originally from Asturias, beautiful place in the northern coast of Spain. In the late 80s, early 90s, we had a huge, heavy industry crisis. It was a very depressing time. However, I was very, very fortunate around that time that I was able to move to the United States with a football scholarship. So I finished my university studies over there. That led into going into graduate school and starting my professional career. I moved back to Spain about 2001. And that experience, it almost took a decade, and it had a tremendous impact in my life. So big that I decided to devote the last 15 years, more or less, of my career in working and organizing international football and educational travel experiences. The reason I'm here today is to present the third half, which is a new social enterprise. It's also connected to international football and educational experiences. Rather now that working with youth clubs, mainly coming from North America to Europe to go on tour. We're working also with the schools as well as young professionals and corporations. We give them now the opportunity to visit some of the network members, some of the street football NGOs, non-profits. Right now we're going to around 15 different destinations. We're adding a few more places as beautiful, and I'm selling a little bit over here just in case you want to go on your next trip to San Lucia or Cape Verde or Lesotho or India. We developed the third half with a dual mission. One, first most, is to generate funds for organizations such as Kick for Life, some of the network members, which is one of the destinations we have. And two is develop conscious leaders, both on the hosting and as well as on the visitor side. So thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Simon from Kick for Life. Kick for Life is the first football club in the world dedicated to creating social change. We're based in Lesotho in southern Africa, which is a tiny country completely surrounded by South Africa, population of 2 million people. Around 25% of the population have HIV. A similar amount, about a quarter of the children in Lesotho have no mum, dad, or have lost both parents thanks to HIV and AIDS. So we're a football club that's really trying to help create social change in Lesotho. But not only that, we are actually a football club trying to compete on the pitch. So from the start, from back in 2008, 2009, our men's first team is now in the Lesotho Premier League. We finished in the top 4 of the league last year. And a couple of weekends ago, we came third in the Lesotho Independence Cup. And our women's team competes in the Women's Super League in Lesotho. So on the pitch, we're competing. But what we're trying to do with the money and the revenue that we generate through our football club is to create the social change in Lesotho. So to give you an idea of some of the things that we've done in the first 6 months of this year, through a couple of our programs, we've managed to test more than 3,500 children and young people with an HIV test. Out of those 3,500, 79 of those were found to be HIV positive, and we've then helped them with follow-up counselling and all the medical support that they need within the Lesotho Health Service. Another 4,000 young people below the age of 18 we've given health education to. We've issued free contraceptives to those people as well. And then for young women and girls between the age of 16 and 24, we've given life skills education, so financial literacy and other things that will help them get employment within the country. So we've done that all through football, and so we can, as a football club, we can still compete on the pitch, but then we're using our income to make a big difference in Lesotho.
Well, that's an amazing array of 4 diverse activities. My starting point really with this was sitting around a table with a fairly well-known football player who won the World Cup and a few Champions League titles, and he said, I want to start my own foundation. And everybody around the table was like, that's such a great idea, that's such a great idea, because when people earn $190,000 a week, everyone sitting around tends to agree with everything that they say. And I just thought what a crap idea that was, because Thomas had actually shared some information about the effectiveness of celebrity foundations. And I think that conversation really reflects, I think, on the traditional football industry's view to anything social? Like, I guess the question that I'd like to hear from you all about is, does the traditional sports industry, and specifically football, does it actually care about social? Is it a PR afterthought, which it has been for many years? And how is that changing? Thomas.
Yeah, I think it's changing when it's becoming clear that there is a business benefit to the engagement, and you're not just doing it for the sake of a nice PR story, but it's tangible business benefit coming out of it. And I think this is what we are moving towards. And speaking about common goal specifically, the change that we are seeking to create is making giving back for the first time part of the business model. And the way for us to achieve it is very simple, is the 1% mechanism. And I think what we're already seeing in the last couple of two months now, since this initiative is out, the incredible response from fans and media. So money is changing football, and commercialization is changing football, and it changes also the way how we as fans relate with the players and those who are running football. It's interesting to see that there's in particular a massive decrease in trust. So do consumers trust in the game? And I think social can, on the one hand, deliver a reputational benefit, and it can show that people in football still care and that the stars on the pitch can still care. And then we are all working with a group, with an audience that I think the traditional football structure is not necessarily reaching. So street football is working or reaching out to what some people say is the bottom billion. So people that are on the fringes of society, not really producing cost, not really contributing to our economies. And what we are doing with all of our businesses is we are providing offers to young people that make them part of our society and make them productive members of society. And we do it through football. So the outcome is ultimately you're producing football consumers that are empowered to take part in this economy. And I think that's a very tangible benefit that exists for football industry, or football as a business.
Yeah, for sure. My background is really on the for-profit side of the industry. Mainly, as I said before, in youth football and education. So I haven't experienced so much controversy out there. Also the fact that we work mainly in the US, and the US right now, some of the figures that are coming from there, some of the facts and data is very impressive. And I think it's also like going to different places around the world. By 90% of the consumers, given the same price and quality, will switch brands for a product or service that is responsible. When you look at this on the global scale, it's 55%. But this 55% also represents that are willing to pay even a higher price. So the tendency is people moving more into the sort of the social entrepreneurship space. Millennials is also driving this. More than 70% of millennials really want to have authentic travel experiences. So that's where we are. And that's why we are tapping into this huge fan base that you were referring to, Thomas. So that's sort of my experience.
Okay. Lawrence has got an MBA, so you know the business side of it. How does that work?
Yeah, well, we can talk about later the value of an MBA, but yeah, I learned something in MBA school. But no, I think that you know this whole concept of a shared value proposition, you know, has been talked about for a long time, and now we're actually starting to see some of those partnerships. You know, we're all in. I mean, I feel like I come from the social service sector, but I'm in the sports world. You know, I'm part of that ecosystem, and we're all invested in the same thing. If there isn't a pipeline of fans, there are a lot of people competing for eyeballs in the world now, and keeping the sport authentic, keeping it healthy, keeping it well thought of that's the future of the sport. And so I think brands and leagues are realizing they need to invest into it. And I think they're realizing now they're trying to do it themselves, which isn't always great either. They need to trust the experts or they're going to get a bad result. They're going to get a hollow result. So I think that's the next thing that has to happen. But I got to say, and I'll continue, I think AFE is a great example in which they're thinking ahead into the future. Hey, the U.S. League is growing. We need to have a presence in the U.S. And they went out and looked and found a partner that had a shared value. And the story of our communities and our players are the same as the stories of the pro players. So it's a very authentic, forward-looking idea, and that gives me a lot of encouragement. We're the beneficiary, but I think if more and more of that stuff starts happening, it can be a better future and a better business.
Simon, have you encountered any resistance from the traditional market or behavior that you're being treated differently to any other possible partner?
Yeah, we've certainly encountered a lot of resistance to some of the things that we're doing from a commercial point of view, and it's making from our side we need to make sure that we've got companies and sponsors on board, of which we've got plenty that are really aligned to our values, and finding a truthful corporate sponsor that does actually do what they say and are aligned to our values is a challenge. But also, even in a small market like Lesotho, with the Lesotho FA, is that really we have to work within that structure and really influence them as to the best way to go. And a good example is with the new Women's Super League. Before, creating a women's league was not on the agenda, but now, thanks to Kick for Life and pushing for them, there are now 8 women's teams playing in Lesotho. So you really have to work within the structure.
I mentioned before about the context. I mean, the context of football at the moment, certainly in Europe, is fairly bleak reputationally. And I don't mean to offend anyone with that, but I try to be realistic. So if you look at the administration of football, I think it's discredited. If you look at the reputation of players, and I work with players, I think they have a reputation, and I'm talking about perceptions, right? That there's different people in every walk of life, but the perceptions of greedy, disconnected, selfish. Is this an opportunity for any kind of social activity that's using soccer as its fundamental tool? Anyone want to start with that?
I mean, certainly. I mean, I think the Europe context is a little different than the American context, but I can tell you right now that there are 3.5 million registered youth soccer players in the U.S. That's registered. There's another double that amount that are not being served by the formal U.S. soccer system, and you don't have to have an MBA to know that's a business opportunity. We got to serve them in an appropriate way, in a way that gives them value, and that's what we're doing. But yes, certainly, I think there's big opportunities there, and when mistakes are made by industry, there's opportunity, I imagine, in Europe too.
In the States, is it because a kid has to pay to play?
Yeah, we have in the United States, it is a pay-to-play model that creates a system that is not really invested in player or youth development. It's servicing the parents that are paying into the system. So most of our kids can't afford to play team sports, and budgets are being cut in schools, so they're not getting it in schools anywhere, and it's really key to development. So there's a big gap, and we're one of the groups trying to fill it, but it's certainly a big opportunity.
Do you guys see an opportunity in terms of the context, reputationally?
Well, elaborating and adding more to what Lawrence just said, and I didn't mention before, but my work outside of the third half is with Generational Leaders International, and we are in essence again an international football tour operator and events company, mainly focused on the U.S. market. When I started the third half, one of my main concerns was am I going to cannibalize my main business by starting the third half? Fortunately, it's not being the case. Surprisingly, we're seeing a lot of youth clubs that are now looking at not coming on trips to Europe and compete, but they start understanding, the parents start understanding that the educational side, the impact that those trips can have on their kids will be a lot more fruitful if they go into these different places that we're now developing in the developing world. So I was surprised, actually, knowing also how Americans are, how competitive they are with their mentality, that they're now really looking into going on trips with the third half rather than with Generation Leaders International. Although they think the market is so big that there will still not be too much cannibalizing, like I said before. You mentioned 3.5 million. I think it's even more than that. I mean, it is absolutely huge, the numbers in the U.S. market.
Do you have any?
Yeah, I think for us, it's certainly an opportunity. we are working with street football for 15 years now, and it's up until this point, this field of football for good has never really reached the football mainstream. It has always been somewhat separated from the business. What we are seeing now, and I think it has a lot to do with the context that you have been speaking about, is that we're actually able to enter the mainstream narrative around football, because there's a shared feeling that there's unhealthy development in football related to commercialization. And does football have a vision for the future? What does it look like in 10, 20 years? And what we can propose is a vision for football by saying, well, let's use this economic development to give it a deeper purpose. And I think that is part of the success of Common Goal so far, or the response that in a week where we see a Neymar transfer deal, there's a football player, courageous football player like Juan Mata stepping up and proposing that to the world. So in that sense, I would very much say it's an opportunity.
Well, one of the clubs that we've partnered with in Europe has been Southampton from the English Premier League, and with their foundation, they've sent a number of their supporters. They've engaged with their supporters to organise for their supporters to come and visit Lesotho and see really on the ground the difference that football has made to people's lives. And those supporters have had to raise some money with the help of Southampton. Some of that money has gone into the city of Southampton in developing programmes with the Southampton Foundation, but some of that money has come to us to continue the good work that we're doing in Lesotho. But what's really happened is that those fans that have come from Southampton have really seen the power that football can do in a developing country like Lesotho, and it's great that a Premier League football club has supported us in creating that relationship.
I guess widening that slightly in terms of there was a talk earlier, and the marketing director of La Liga was talking about how their mission is to go beyond just serving football fans and reach this mass audience to become something relevant to a larger audience. And I constantly, when I'm also involved in an esports project, and so a lot of the conversations are about remaining relevant to Gen Zs. I have to say Gen Z because I'm British, and it seems to me that that's just another opportunity for everything that you're doing, from, I suppose, a micro scale, whether it's an athlete. And the agent that I work with is looking at Juan Mata, who on the 4th of August, the same day that Neymar was presented in Paris, saying it was an emotional decision, not an economic one, for 222 million euros. He became a top 10 trending topic and then was subsequently talked about in over 300 media. And the agent's going, why can't you do this for my clients? You're like, well, because your clients have to do something. They have to make themselves three-dimensional. They have to make themselves relevant beyond playing football, which is effectively what you guys are doing with this content building. So what are your feelings? I think we've touched on the current context, but going forward, does that give you a great deal of confidence in terms of being relevant to a younger audience? And just for the sake of it, we'll start down the other end. Simon.
I think what we're doing with Kick for Life is extremely relevant to the younger audience. If you look at who are the people that engage with us on social media, it's really anyone under the age of 30 and a few above. So to me, that shows that it's the future of the football industry, the future of what we're doing, that we've engaged so well with the younger generation, and that they have an affinity to what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. I mean, our target market, as I said, is the youth, and we see the trends that are coming from the millennials. One figure that I would like to share as well is that within the next 30 years, the Wealth Transfer Report has mentioned that more than $50 trillion will move from all these family offices and all these investment companies into the millennials. The millennials are really interested in doing something different. I mean, they live through 9/11. They lived through financial crisis and a number of other horrible things, and they are also very concerned about climate change. So I think it's not going to be a nice thing to have, and the charity narrative is going to be changing quickly over here. I think this is going to be a must-have, and social entrepreneurship will be the common way of doing business. I mean, they're doing good, doing well, will not be something unique, but I like to see it that way, and I think that the numbers are giving us that information.
Yeah, I have a small point here, which is an interesting one. I mean, we as social enterprises are set up to do social work, but we, as soccer organizations, we're creating content, multiple times a day across multiple cities and neighborhoods. We're putting on shows every single day, and that's an opportunity to, some of our partners, corporate partners, to interact with and engage in a great way. We're not really set up to do it. I mean, it's one of the, investments we're trying to make is, how do we position the organization to be able to capture, all that engagement, and, so it's another evolution that I think we need to think. We are thinking more about, but we're trying to crack that nut. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, in any consumer business, I think two of the most important things are trust from your audience and connection with the audience. And I feel on both levels, the social dimension of football can make a very strong contribution to where we're currently at. And I feel at the same time, people, especially the younger generation, they're very sensitive to, is something authentic? Is it real? Can I feel it? Can I experience it? Is it a fit with the person? Or is it all bullshit? So it needs to be authentic, and there needs to be skin in the game. And for us, speaking from a common goal perspective, that meant let's think beyond the usual model of quite a loose affiliation that a football star has with a brand, whereby you lend your image rights and do 2 Facebook posts a year, and take a step forward. And that skin in the game for us is a small monetary contribution that's not going to change your life. Your lifestyle is going to be just the same tomorrow when you wake up, but taken together it can create a massive impact on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And we actually sat together in a meeting in London with an agent, and he was sort of sitting there listening to it, waiting, okay, charity thing, exactly as Thomas has just described. I put my client with the charity. He does maybe a tweet a month or something and talks about it in an interview. And when the 1% of the salary came up, there was actually a physical reaction in the guy. He actually like, But barriers of the traditional football industry. We were talking earlier about structurally the soccer industry is an extremely fragmented market where things are very expensive. People spend a lot of money buying rights to things. Therefore, they're strictly controlled. How much of your activities are based on an idea of co-creation, of sharing, collectivity, and how does that clash against what I perceive to be the structure of the traditional football industry?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question. The way I think about it, is that the football world industry really is only one piece of the pie in the ecosystem that we work within, and it's an important one for 99% of our participants. A long-term future in the football industry is like not the reality. So we're just as interested in these vertical partnerships in soccer as we are in other forms of employment and education. So we can't spend our whole day worrying about how we work with the football world, because it's really only a part of what we do. So we're whether it's public money, that becomes a selling point to how we work with the football industry. Is we can leverage these other things that you don't do. You do football, we do all of this too. So if we put that together, we can really create something great. So when we think ahead about collaboration, it's just thinking in a bigger picture kind of pond, and how do we take that and put it together with the strength of the football world. So we don't want to own that.
Well, actually, I think I could probably only echo what Lawrence said, that we're operating within the confines of the football industry within Lesotho, and we can try and influence that with the example that I gave about the Women's Super League and getting that set up. But actually, we're engaged with a lot more partners and a lot more sponsors and other people that are trying to help us do what we do than just the football industry. And I think a lot of people want to be involved with us because we're in the football industry. And that's a huge selling point the power of football has to create social change. That means that a lot of people actually want to be involved with the football industry, and sometimes those people can help affect the change within the industry that we're operating in.
Well, I mean, as I said, the youth clubs that we work with are already part of the football industry, especially in the pay-to-play model that is the United States. But we're hoping that we can expand that into the professional game and not just stay in the youth. We think there's a good opportunity with fans like the Southampton fans that go to Lesotho often. And we would like to make this mainstream within the football industry. One thing that I like to add as well from us, in my other work experience, where we see the professional clubs in Europe sort of like the main destination. For us now, going to visit these non-profits is treating these non-profits exactly as we treat the professional clubs. They earn revenue, as we said before. This is not charity. They provide us with services. We're at an equal level playing field, and so we treat the whole football industry as not two sides of the same coin, but just the same thing altogether.
Yeah, for us, collaboration is really a means to achieve more and to achieve scale. I think there's an opportunity right now. A lot of, you see individual initiatives, social initiatives being set up. One example was when the financial crisis hit, almost everybody was doing something, but it was not organized and it was not strategic. And therefore, you fall short of the kind of impact you can create. So with a collective model like Common Goal, what you can do is you can just get a higher social return of investment with the same input. And so it's a very logical decision to go and strive towards more collaboration.
I mean, I think what would be useful, I don't know if anyone in the audience has got any questions at this stage. For you, what I'd like to do is hear you guys talk to each other. So I don't know if you've got any questions for each other, or I can start with one which I always like to ask, which is if you could change anything at all about the soccer industry with a press of a button, what would that thing be?
Yeah, the thing I would change with a press of a button is gender equality, and have women's teams on the same level as men's teams. Not only in Lesotho has that been a massive challenge over the past year or two, trying to create a women's Super League. We've now got 8 teams, and even now on some Saturdays, some of those teams have problems to raise a number of players to play in the top league. And if I commend what the Norway FA have done by offering the female players the same salary as the male players. I think that's great. And I think not many people realise quite how oppressed the women's game has been over the past century. Even in the UK, there was no women's football, I think, between 1921 and 1971 or something like that. So it would be great with a press of a button to have women's football on the same level as men's football, and then really the whole of society would be involved in what we're trying to do, instead of half and a bit as it is at the moment.
Well, for me, it will be parents. I think parents are the ones that make a decision in bringing their kids into the youth football system. And if they all think they have a Messi or a Cristiano Ronaldo at home, we have an issue. So I think they should be putting a lot more emphasis on the educational side of the game, and the impact is going to have a long term for that child's life. One thing that is happening, at least here in Spain, is that I see rugby growing. Not that I have anything against rugby, but one of the reasons that a lot of parents are moving into rugby is just because of that. It seems like football has lost some of the intrinsic values, Hopefully this will change, or it will be forced to change within the near future.
Actually, on Saturday, I went out and saw the escuelas, the schools, and it was really impressive what they've done with a public partnership to get that facility that's provided by the government to enable a soccer club for the public benefit. So that opened my eyes to, one thing I would try to get is get the industry to work with community-based organizations with local government to leverage the football image and attraction to recognize, as you say, the educational human development side of the game. That would be a shift I'd like to see happen.
Well, for us, it's really about getting what we're trying to do with Common Goal and get there faster. So have the 1% established as a normal, as a standard for the entire industry. So that the 1% is actually applied to each and every euro earned in football. That would allow us to quadruple the impact of football for good around the world, which is right now already at 2.5 million annually empowered through Street Football World. So we can move towards 10 or 20 million with the incredible potential that football have. And if you have that red button here, I would push it right away to get that reality.
Has anyone got a question for any of these guys? Got them here? No? All being shy? What's the time? Yeah? Yeah? So, Thomas, if you think back, I suppose, when you first started thinking, along with Jürgen, about Common Goal, how do you analyse where you are now, and where would you like to be in a year's time? And I'll ask the same question to each of you.
So we recently did some research and found that there's 65,000 professional football players around the world registered. And with Common Goal, we're trying to build this inclusive movement. And for us, the next stepping stone is actually getting the 1% market share. So trying to get 650 professional football players making the pledge. That's the next milestone for us to achieve.
Okay. Well, if no one has a question, nothing. Okay. Well, for me, I mean, I'd just like to wrap up by saying thank you very much, Thomas, Lawrence, Germain, Simon, and also, I suppose, from a personal level, that if you're thinking it from a brand perspective, it makes sense to become involved with social. And if you're thinking of it from a business perspective, then 80% of younger millennials are more likely to buy your product if you have a demonstrable commitment to a social cause. So it makes business sense, it makes content sense, and I think in the world that we live in today, it makes sense to get involved. So thanks, guys, and keep going. And anybody that wants to get involved, then please just reach out to them and have a chat afterwards. Thanks.